Walt, we're back from CES. I took the red eye, and of course, our listeners and viewers know you took the gentleman's flight. And when I got back from CES, look what I got. I got the clapper hat. So now I'm going to harass you with the clapper hat. If you say something nice, I'm going to clap for you. So thanks to Hugh at KPMG for the hat. Really appreciate it. But now on to autonomy. We saw a lot of interesting things, had a really good intimate meetings with folks, and people came up to you, asked you for selfies. You're pretty famous, Walt. Then there was the chatter of CES was the Zoox debacle. What's that going to lead to? Waymo officially unveiled Ojai, which is the Zeeker. Mobileye made some news. So let's break down CES to start off the show. What were your takeaways?
First of all, to your point, which is always the case with CES, it's just meeting great people. We had obviously a lot of time to spend, some quieter time with some of the key leaders in the industry, both trucking and in the autonomy side of things, car side of things, OEMs, as well as tech stack, chips, whatever. That's why CES is perfect. It's just a bunch of people, coming together. And again, to reiterate what Grayson said, thanks for everyone that kind of came up to us and gave us the feedback in person, which obviously tends to be more humanized than sometimes some of the other feedback that we get. But the main takeaway, I think, is just that I'm even more bullish on the future of autonomy and the opportunities that exist for multiple companies. This is not a one or two player race. There's a lot of great technology that's getting developed. A lot of people that are very smart, have great backgrounds, that are putting a lot of hard work in bringing their technology to market. And regardless of what's in the market today, which we're all very bullish about, I think the opportunity going forward, is pretty significant. There was a darker side, though, Grayson. Maybe you can outline some of the things that happened that were disappointing, in terms of CES and at least one of the members of the autonomy community.
It was a darker side, and it didn't involve going to an establishment. It happened right there on the strip. And I'll say this bluntly, and I have already said this privately to Amazon. It was a disaster for Zoox. Vehicles were breaking down consistently. I didn't have one trip where I went from one end of the strip to the other where I didn't see a vehicle broken down. And the night that we had our little shindig, and I have a video, which I will share with us, a Zoox vehicle was blocking the entrance to the Venetian, causing all sorts of traffic. So I don't know. I got to ask, Walt, what we experienced, is this normal for Zoox operations? There's a lot of questions, I
mean, we've both been in Zoox at their headquarters. Myself, I can't remember. It's probably like 18 months ago now. I actually I left my hotel. I walked to a location, which was a pickup spot. So just to be clear, like the ODD, I think those are the right acronyms. I'm sure I botched that in the past, which we've heard from our listeners about. The geofenced area of the Zoox. It's not like you just use the Zoox throughout that. You have to go to like one of, I think it was 5 or 6 pickup spots. So anyone that's been to Vegas knows it's not easy to get around. So I was walking over to this pickup spot. As I'm walking, I'm seeing the app doesn't even open until 11 a.m. So I time it. So I walk up there 11 a.m. There's like 5 other people who had walked there that was trying to test it. As a result, I have a 45-minute wait to get in one of these Zoox. So I go into Topgolf, grab something to bite, get in the Zoox, and the ride hadn't improved in 2 years. And you and I, as our listeners know, get in all of these cars. That's one of the best ways to get a sense of what's going on. And it was just a very herky-jerky ride. Like it was not smooth during the of course. Did you even try to get into one of these Zoox, Grayson?
I tried multiple times, and I was like, oh, since you told me the 45-minute wait, there was one post that went viral on X, an hour and a half wait, so let me order one before I walk over there. You can't even order one before you walk over there. It was inconvenient for me, so no, and I did not try one.
My other complaint, while we're in the complaint section, is now granted, I can't play. You're clapping. You're using your clapper head for my complaints, or was that an accidental clap? I can't play first-person shooter games with my kids. Obviously, some parents think no one should play first-person shooter games with their kids, but in my case, I get nauseous. But by the way, side note, I saw an incredible Samsung 3D TV where for the first time ever, I was in like a first person shooter and I did not get nauseous. That's just a side note. When I got in the Zoox, like you have the side windows, but the front and back windows are effectively covered by some mesh. So you can't see out the front of the window while this thing is driving, which is just not, for me, maybe everyone's not like this, a positive riding experience on top of the fact that it was herky jerky. So I think there's just the experience itself, given how long this product has been around, was disappointing, to say the least.
I would say that's an understatement. And the Uber drivers I spoke to said that this is a common occurrence of how these vehicles do not operate in a well manner, which raises the question: Amazon's got to make a change. This was not a good reflection. What do you think they're going to do?
I mean, for our Lightshed top 20 predictions for 2026, I think I specifically said they need a big shakeup there, and maybe whether that's an acquisition of a technology company, and in the process of doing that to kind of maintain their space, maybe there's some benefit of having Lyft as part of the family. Who knows? But something has to change at Zoox. This is not suitable for where Amazon, a company of that stature, should be in the market.
So, do you think it's an acquisition? Is it a management change? I'll just tell you point blank, they got to do a technology overhaul.
All of the above, Grayson. We're going to be right if they do even one of these things, but it's an all of the above. And maybe how they can justify it and say, like, look, we'll have this parallel path of continuing to develop this purpose-driven, box car, and then at the same time maybe buy one of the existing technology guys in the market as a way to kind of partner with OEMs and have a parallel path. Maybe that's the situation. I don't know.
Or could we see a situation where Amazon just pulls the plug and said it was a mistake?
I mean, they certainly could do that. Apple had a autonomous car program which they pulled. I think that was a mistake by them, given the size of this market opportunity, and the multiple products that you can sell. I mean, just to jump forward, Geely, which is a Chinese auto manufacturer, was showing their car. This is similar to what they showed last year. And how you can have this very comfortable seat, 50-inch television. I mean, this speaks to the bullishness that we have and what autonomy can enable. But you would think that Amazon, for a variety of reasons, that their presence in media, the presence, in terms of AI and the investments that they're making there, as well as just delivery, right? And the crossover of it makes sense for them to have real product. Zoox, sorry, it just isn't it. And it just, to be at CES and be known for the car that everyone was seeing breaking down around CES. I mean, maybe they'll provide stats to refute what we're saying, but like I saw myself multiple times, it was just sitting there. Same thing, taxi drivers telling us the performance of these things have been problematic. And like, even when I was in the Zoox itself, there's no button to say, press it to like pull over on the side. Like if you're in a Waymo, you can press a button and it will pull over wherever you're going, because it's all in these point-to-point locations. So it's just, I don't know. That's the dark side. Let's get more positive and go back to the positive.
Before we get to the positive, I have to say it's a poor reflection on the Amazon brand, since Amazon's innovating on so many other things. So hopefully Amazon can right the ship. But we do know, or I'll say, we think that change is probably coming at Zoox.
The big news, obviously, of CES, as always, is whenever Jensen of NVIDIA speaks, then everyone listens. There's a couple different things he talked about as it relates to autonomy. They introduced this, I guess you call it Alpamayo, I forget how the pronunciation is, but it's open source, reason-based vision language for those of our, people that love to debate the LiDAR versus vision language model, looking at long-tail autonomous driving edge cases. They also put in, I think, simulation tools in there. They tied it to the Halo safety system. I mean, it's new, but is it really new? I mean, NVIDIA already released open reasoning on, I think, early December. They had this Alpamayo R1 thing out there. It was, and that was already framed as open source. We've talked about on this podcast before how, we think that they're trying to go OpenStack. There's been my long thesis of, as your big companies, you need to be vertically integrated. So, I mean, the only nuance, I guess, is that NVIDIA is explicitly positioning it as a teacher model rather than running like directly in the vehicle. It's meant to be, distilled into like these smaller runtime stacks. So for the bulls out there, if you look at how the stocks reacted, like the concept is, oh, open source, oh, NVIDIA, like this is like the Android for autonomy. So this is like Uber's dream because you've kind of democratized autonomy because NVIDIA is just going to enable all these, different groups of people or just different companies, and challenge and create the fragmentation that Uber needs and that the industry needs to get autonomy to the next level. What are your thoughts on what this really means for the industry?
What this really means is NVIDIA's looking to vertically integrate automotive, but at the end of the day, they're looking to sell more GPUs. NVIDIA has open source models in the past for autonomous driving stacks. The major difference in this model was put under an Apache 2.0 license that you can use commercially. The kicker on this is, on the previous model that they open sourced, you had to sign a legally binding contract where you could only use NVIDIA GPUs and you were subject to audits by NVIDIA. So it was a very restrictive NVIDIA license. This has an Apache 2 license, so you can do a lot more with it outside of the model weights. And it's getting traction. It's been downloaded 15,702 times on Hugging Face, so I'll give them a clap, NVIDIA, for that. So there's clearly traction there. Where this ultimately goes, I could see more restrictive terms coming back, but at the end of the day, NVIDIA wants to sell more GPUs as Qualcomm, ZF, ARM look to enter the autonomous driving space.
So my question to a lot of the companies that were there that are using NVIDIA is like, what does this mean for you? If the market thinks that this is democratizing and androidizing it, creating competition, that theoretically is not great for, let's say, a Neuro that's using their compute. Now, the answer is I think for many of these companies is like, look, and I think even though they didn't say this, like it was good for a lot of companies. Everyone wants to like get on stage with Jensen and announce a product because it's that nice halo effect. Obviously, the compute is a great product. Not many, if any, of these companies have bought more than the compute and some of the software that they're already trying to sell. Obviously, NVIDIA can go directly to the OEMs with this type of stuff, and some of the OEMs are trying to develop this stuff on their own, but that's like a Mobileye type approach. And I think there's a lot of criticism in the industry saying that these companies that start with like, hey, we're going to go level 2 ADAS with the OEMs directly is a very different thing than going to level 4, right? This is the criticism of, I think, Tesla's approach and, where maybe Mobileye is, and even Wave, who, by the way, had like no presence at CES, nothing to be seen of Wave, given the importance of autonomy right now. So, I think that is the kind of the pushback. The challenge that the industry is going to have is like, NVIDIA, like Tesla, if they're entering a market, it becomes an overhang, which is a positive, obviously, for Uber. When the reality is, I'm not sure, like, what are we supposed to believe that Mercedes-Benz is going to all of a sudden become like the leader in autonomy, or like GM is going to come out of nowhere and partner with NVIDIA and have Sterling Anderson like have an OEM develop autonomy? Possible, and we'll follow those things as they take place. But in the meantime, the companies that are in the market today are moving towards delivering cars this year, not in a couple of years.
Yeah, we had the announcement also from Ford where they're developing new advanced autonomous driving systems. So the OEMs are coming back, and there's a lot of partners to dance. And what role Mobileye plays, who knows? What role Wave plays, who knows? And at the end of the day, is NVIDIA going to be a customer, or are they going to be a competitor? And I think that's something that we're going to have to continue to watch because we don't know yet.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think they're going to be fine. Let's say Neuro is wildly successful. If they sell a ton of product, they're still going to be using a bunch of the NVIDIA compute in there, and that's still going to benefit from those companies. So maybe they're just, I don't know. Whatever the reason is, look, they also overshadowed. Mobileye was trying to hype people up for the announcements that they had there. And basically the Mobileye, and this overshadowed that, right? Because now you're saying like, okay, if Mobileye is effectively trying to help the OEMs enable level 2, and now like NVIDIA is going to say, well, we're going to open source this, and this is going to be the way to level 2. But then the Mobileye's message boiled down to this, that we're going to win in the pragmatic lane. Cheap, consolidated L2 plus that OEMs can standard fit. Robotaxi timelines are still alive. And basically just get it in the cheap cars as opposed to just everything. So the two threats that exist, obviously, is the OEMs like Sterling Anderson and GM that want to do it in-house. I don't know whether they're using Mobileye or not. And obviously NVIDIA pushing a more complete stack. So, they had an announcement with a big US car maker to put this in the driver assist system in every version of the vehicle. Again, underscoring it's not just for the high-end cars, but basically just everything. Standard fit, right? Trying to move it, this typical Mobileye style. But again, we'll see how many auto manufacturers actually adopt that and use that and generate revenue for that company.
But why give these vague statements a major U.S. automaker? Why not, if the deal's signed, why not publicly identify who that is? Because that can help us analyze that market.
Yeah, I don't know. And look, at the end of the day, the dominant player in level 2+ right now is Tesla. You and I use it every day. It works great. We believe that it can get to level 4. Obviously, there are those that believe that won't happen. We'll know, I think, soon enough. But this Mobileye approach, or the Wave approach, or even the NVIDIA approach, are seemingly not taken seriously by the rest of the industry. A lot of people say this is a very different thing than perfecting level 2 versus getting to level 4. And Wave is in that bucket. And so is Mobileye, and obviously so is NVIDIA at this point.
We're going to see. We'll have data points on Wave next year when the Nissan ProPilot starts coming off the line.
And when is that expected, and do you think that they're going to deliver on those timelines?
Based on reporting from the Nikkei out of Japan, yes, I do believe they will. And that'll be in 2027 in the ProPilots.
Based out of reporting, so you're relying on the Nikkei to gauge your confidence level on whether Wave can deliver. And what are they delivering? Wave, level 2 or level 4?
It'll be an L2 system.
Great. Well, so let's move on to level 4 players, because that's what autonomy is all about. And Waymo, obviously the existing leader in the market with several thousand cars. The criticism that we've had here on the Autonomy Markets podcast is the volume. And so they showed this Zeekr, this Geely Chinese-made car. They basically just rebranded. I have a video. I think I put it up on my Twitter account. They literally put a decal on it. So maybe this was a very recent brand name that they came with. Ojai, I think it's pronounced Ojai. The car itself looked a little bit better. You still have these gigantic sensors. I believe it's still upfit. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's coming off the manufacturing line. You were on the trade show floor as well. What were your impressions of the Ojai?
Big, bulky, and ugly. That's the first thing that I looked at. If you look at it from the rear, you'll notice, if you want to call them the sensor pods, they're very bulky. It's not a good looking vehicle, and it's Chinese at the end of the day. And where geopolitics are going, no matter sticker or no sticker, it's still a Chinese vehicle, and I don't find it to be very, very attractive. I know there's a lot of engineering that went into it, but still, it's not very attractive.
I don't care how it looks, Grayson. I mean, if it gets me somewhere and the ride is comfortable, unlike the Zoox, which has a similar boxy look, it has a front window that you can actually look out of. It was a little odd that Waymo didn't allow us to look inside the car, because, a couple of booths over was the Geely, which I think I mentioned before, opened up. They had these great comfortable seats, and it showed the very comfortable interior. If you have the interior that Geely was showing, which makes this thing, then who cares how it looks on the outside? This is all about your comfort and safety on the inside.
It's a very valid point. It's still ugly, but very, very valid point from you.
It was also great. The Waymo had a great booth.
The Hyundai looked good.
Yeah, well, we can switch to that then. The Hyundai also looked good. But let's weave the Hyundai into our Lucid. Well, we can talk about the Hyundai now. It looked good. It was what the production model should look like. Again, it underscores, what we're hopeful with Waymo. Just to, for our podcast listeners now, on the light shed side of things, I predicted that Waymo will hit 6,000 cars by the end of 2026. That's the prediction that I'm on the tape for now, as well as getting to production. But I think they're going to compete with Lucid in who can get to production faster, because the Lucid car looked awesome, better than anything out there. I mean, the quality of it. And by the way, they let us sit in the Lucid car, unlike Waymo. High quality. They had representatives from Uber, Lucid, and obviously Nuro there. It sounds like they can get to production by the end of the year. So like here we are, Waymo, who's been in the market, considered the dominant player, and like maybe Lucid gets to a production level car before Waymo. Do you think that's possible?
Well, this is a clap moment to the Lucid-Nuro team. Beautifully designed car. The integration was flawless. It was well thought out. And here's something that a lot of folks don't talk about. This is massively inside baseball. Lucid has one of the best engineering cultures out there. And what we saw with that product was a clear example of what Eric Bach and the engineering team are doing at Lucid. So well done, Lucid. And depending on capacity, and I don't have the exact numbers of capacity that they can do in the Arizona plant, and they can also do at the Riyadh plant, there is a very clear path for Uber Lucid-Nuro to scale this pretty significantly.
I mean, the commitment, I guess, is 20,000 over, what is it, 5 or 6 years. I suspect it's going to be faster than that based on some of the conversations that we had. Lucid, obviously a smaller player. I'll also kind of acknowledge that, look, what you show on the trade show floor isn't necessarily what ends up getting made. So we can't speak too much about like a trade show car. But look, it looked good. I think the price point is good. I think the roadmap to getting lower price Lucid is good. In Nuro's case, I think they probably got line of sight on a second OEM beyond Lucid. This is all good news for Uber, the Uber team, in terms of pushing forward a technology. And it just makes me think that, like, look, I know how Uber has been fairly restrictive of their capital to this point, and it still makes sense for them to not kind of own the stack. But, over time, as, maybe like a Lucid-Nuro partnership succeeds and others like Wave maybe fall by the wayside or just stick to level 2 ADAS, that it makes sense, I think, for Uber to ultimately buy one of these things. We're talking multiple years down the road. A lot of things can happen, but if like the Waymo relationship, continues to sour with Uber, Tesla obviously doesn't do anything with Uber. Obviously, there's people out there that thinks that Tesla will never do anything. That basically, the winners of the others, could end up basically being owned by Uber. Thoughts?
I'll go on the ticker here and make a prediction that Uber will reboot ATG at some point, vertically integrate. That's their advanced technologies group, and it will be through an acquisition, because if you look at the market of relying on partnerships, so Uber had the VW Mobileye partnership for Los Angeles. Well, VW canceled the ID Buzz vehicle. So that vehicle is not going to be available there. So they're going to have to backfill that. Or if they own the asset, it gets interesting. So here's something that I thought a lot about at CES, and I thought about it on my flight home. Could you ever see a deal where the PIF orchestrates some sort of Nuro Lucid merger, and then that becomes a subdivision of Uber just for Robotaxi, since there is common shareholders in the PIF?
I mean, I think anything's on the table, Grayson. I just don't know timeline. I think you got to let things play out a bit more, because there's other players in the market. May Mobility, obviously, we spent time with AV Ride. We're obviously very excited about what they can do. Rivian is obviously didn't show up at this thing, but obviously these Lucids are a lot cheaper than Rivian, and Rivian's trying to do this all in house, which is questionable. But like, there's other players out there, and I think Uber would probably hold back. And the same thing with Nuro. Like, if Nuro wants to maximize its value, it probably makes sense to get other OEMs. And by the way, Nuro still has what I think is a great product in that road robot delivering food. It's just they can't seem to find a buyer for that. I think it's still sitting out there. We spent a little bit of time with Serve Robotics, and obviously great progress there. I mean, I think that in hindsight, I think the challenge with the Nuro robot stuff, the R1 or whatever it was called, is maybe the market needed to develop with sidewalk delivery first, which restaurants can handle a little bit better before, there's these street robots. Though I think there will be a market for that intent, ultimately. You hear what Uber has said on the Uber Eats side. They might have just been too early, but I think it's a little odd that asset continues to sit out there and hasn't found a new home.
Yes and no. Don't forget, at the end of the day, it's a BYD product that built it. So maybe there's some implications there of why it's not moving. But I got to give credit to the Nuro leadership team when they made that pivot. It's working well for them, and I do agree with you that The bot was probably a little bit early, but the company made a really great pivot to where they are today.
So let's just, I mean, now we've hit these things. I mean, what is the bigger picture here with Uber? Again, we met a lot of great people at the Waymo booth. It was great that they staffed it, with kind of real people, I guess is the way to say it, not robots. Same thing with the Lucid-Nuro. I mean, still think our concerns are valid in terms of what's going on with that relationship in existing markets. No, definitely not dead. And I think there's still opportunities for Waymo and Uber, to continue to partner. And again, maybe there's just going to be this flow where like Waymo kind of does it on its own. And then ultimately when they get enough cars, they have to go back to Uber in order to source that type of demand. You've definitely been more negative more recently on Uber than I have. What was your takeaway on kind of the latest between that Uber Waymo relationship?
The relationship's over. I stand by it. The relationship's over. The demand generation's not needed. The one thing that I believe Waymo still has to figure out, either through a strategic partnership or spinning up a new division inside the company, is the logistical aspect with all the depots. I still think Waymo has a lot of operational stuff that they're going to have to work through, either through building Waymo Logistics LLC or making a splash in the space. So that's something that they really still need to figure out.
I mean, I couldn't disagree more. You can't just say the relationship is over. They're in multiple markets together. Again, you could have management changes specifically at Waymo as they try and get people that can figure out volumes. I think that's a very aggressive statement to make. Will there be near-term signal? Like if Austin shifts on the service side, or maybe, you have, it's shifting to a Waymo One app, sure. But to say it's over, I think is like, we're still early stages here, Grayson. So I think there's still an opportunity for these companies to figure out how to work together.
I'm sticking to my guns. I'm saying it's over.
Okay. Well, you can stick to your guns and still be wrong. Now let's talk about another.
No, I'm going to clap when I stick to my guns.
Anyway, obviously love the people at both companies, smart, but just business is business, and we'll have to see how these things evolve. And there's no question there's some issues in these markets. And frankly, it just means that, and we're not doing it on this episode, but I did also meet a lot of great people on the fleet management side of things. There is money chasing that. It is still a fragmented market, but there are more people out there than I first realized. I think the developments at some of the rental car companies are going to be interesting to watch among others. That is a massively key component to helping this industry. And we will do much better job going forward at covering that as we talk to more people. Let's talk about like a company that's kind of come out of the woodwork, Tensor. I mean, those that are deep in the industry know this as X Auto. They, I guess, had like 100 cars in China that came by. They had a huge booth. They had like a different, I think, a better car than we saw before. It must have cost a ton to make this thing. It was a beautiful thing. They had the steering wheel that goes in and out. They had presentations all day long. What were your impressions of seeing that Tensor car?
The car was pretty, but the whole presentation, to me, something just doesn't add up, because we do not have any public documentation around funding. We don't have public documentation around the VinFast relationship, and they can't get out of the parking lot. They say it's regulatory, but there's a thing called test tracks that you can legally operate it. Something just doesn't add up. I know I'm going down a little rabbit hole here, but something just does not add up.
Let's back up and to explain and translate to our listeners what you were referring to. In California, if you want to go get in a Tensor, you will drive around in their parking lot and not on the street. So for a company that's apparently going, whatever, the product is ready to go production, you would think that they could have worked with the state of California to be able to take that thing on the street. What they would say is, in the Middle East is where they're more willing to allow these things to travel in the street. So I guess if you and I want to get on a long plane, we can try it out there. You are right, though. There's a lot of questions that remain unanswered about kind of funding and status of the thing. And it's just weird for them to have this big coming out at the show with booth and the presentations and still not have, I think, some of the basic story down. So look, and for our listeners as who are not the longer time listeners, but like Tensor, as a reminder, they're not going after the Robotaxi market. They're like trying to sell this very expensive car to private users. And by the way, like it works in a limited ODD. This is not going to be like your Tesla, which effectively should work everywhere, when they get it there. It will be level 4. It'll get to the end of the ODD, and then this steering wheel will pop out, and then you'll have to take over a lot of extra expense for this kind of early stage privately owned car. So it looks like a great car. I don't know. There's just a lot of unanswered questions with this company.
Outside of the company, the questions that we don't have answers to yet are the legal liabilities. So who is to determine when the vehicle's engaged, the human's engaged, and what happens if the human doesn't engage when the vehicle tells you to engage? There's a lot of insurance stuff to go through, regulatory stuff, liability. So there's a lot of questions even outside of the company that we're going to have to watch.
Well, Grayson, those questions were answered to me. I had my inspector hat on. I don't know what you were. You were on another side of the conference hall at that point. The answer was, and they're already working with insurance companies, that it will be insured by them in the ODD. When they are the driver, they will provide the insurance. But then when you exit the ODD, you will have to get your own insurance. I'm like, look, I don't know, it was Marsh or whoever this insurance guy is that you're dealing with, you might want to try and bundle those two things together, because there will be obviously a monthly fee associated with this service. So, there's no reason to kind of split the insurance. So, yeah, they're going to have to take on that insurance, when they're the driver.
I have a clapper hat on today, but putting on my inspector hat, in order to pull that off in a seamless fashion as you described, Tensor's going to have to get an insurance license in all 50 states. Tesla's actively working on getting insurance in all 50 states. I believe they're at 13 or 14 states. And you have to deal with the insurance commissioners in each state. That is a long, cumbersome process. That is also very, very, very expensive to achieve.
You're talking about getting an insurance license for a company whose cars are still operating in a parking lot. I mean, obviously, as they move forward, they will take care of these things. You have a very skeptical. I've been rubbing off on you, Grayson. This has been a very skeptical podcast for you thus far. These things happen, over time as you continue to develop the product. The bigger question, though, Grayson, is who's going to spend the amount of money it's going to take to buy that car? Because it looks like a very expensive car. And the odd thing about this is our thoughts of contract manufacturing. I think we both believe there's an opportunity for that in this autonomy industry. When you think of contract manufacturing, you think of low cost, right? Not the exact opposite, where there's this super expensive car that's getting made in Vietnam.
So what I'll do, I will get a hat that says Walt is a good teacher, and I will wear it on here as a thank you for rubbing off on me. I'm skeptical, but I'm just curious, and I want to find the facts. So that's really what it is at the end of the day. And I'm going to give you a random ballpark number based on what I saw. You're probably in the low side 275 to 450 for vehicle based on what we saw there on the floor.
That makes even a Rivian look cheap. Why don't we go to the foreign autonomy desk? What do we got on the foreign autonomy desk, Grayson?
So XPeng, the Chinese manufacturer of vehicles, is preparing to deploy. And when I say deploy, they're preparing to test their vision-only robotaxis on public roads in China. This was approved by the Chinese government, so that's something that we're going to want to watch there. In the China markets.
Grayson, this is an outrage. What vision only? I was told with certainty by many people that the only thing that we should think about in terms of autonomy has to have LiDAR, because what's going to happen in the dark?
We're going to clap in the dark. That's what's going to happen in the dark. You don't need LiDAR. It's being proven over and over and over again. There are multiple data points to look at that you fundamentally do not need LiDAR. So vision only is scaling and staying in China. This is my belief. This is my belief that at some point China is going to pick a national winner, maybe two winners, and champion them and export them and export that technology to the world. And the leader right now in China in terms of exporting autonomous technology is Baidu. They got a permit from the Dubai RTA to deploy drive route robotaxis in the Emirates, with plans to scale up to 1,000 robotaxis. And no surprise to you or me, they opened up a maintenance service facility in the Emirate as well. So it's getting ready to ramp up, and that will be commercially operating, no driver, in Dubai by the end of Q1 2026.
That's great. Now we have something on the Lightshed podcast. We have something called Disgrace of the Week. So we don't do that here because we're trying to make this more positive, despite Grayson's, skepticism this week. But this comes out of the Financial Times, who I think wrote an opinion piece by someone arguing that Europe doesn't need robotaxis because there's, in general, less deaths per miles driven, I guess, there than there is in the U.S. and China. They cited well-known safety, hawk Phil Koopman, which we've talked about, I think, before on this podcast. To argue that, like, okay, since there's less deaths, we don't want to get down to no deaths or even fewer deaths, or the safety issues of the Uber driver themselves or the Grab driver, I guess, in some of these markets is just absolutely ridiculous. Like, this is, for those of us that are autonomy bulls, that is an absolute disgrace by the Financial Times to make that argument, in my view. What are your thoughts?
It's off base. It's factually incorrect, and they made an argument about less traffic. I'm not kidding. That was in the article there in black and white, or say pink and black, since the FT has that salmon color. Autonomy is good for Europe, and autonomy is coming to Europe, and it's going to be integrated into the transportation system in Europe, and it's going to do a lot of good. And one thing that the opinion piece failed to mention, autonomy is going to be good for the European economy because the tourists are going to want to take it, and it's going to be integrated. And there's a lot of individuals, for whatever reason, right or wrong, will not go on a public bus. Sorry, Europeans. They will not go on a subway. Sorry, Europeans. And they will not use public transportation. Oh, again, I'm sorry. But they will go in a private vehicle, and it's going to be good for the European economies. And this hiding behind safety rhetoric has to stop. Autonomy, at the end of the day, is an experience. It was going to make our roads safer, and these benchmarks that are being put out there by certain individuals are just fundamentally flawed.
I think it was our ex-president that said, "There you go again." Enough with the tourism. Like, autonomy is exciting not because I'm riding a Disney ride Waymo. That the excitement of that lasts about 2 minutes after you hop in the Waymo. The autonomy opportunity is safety, reliability, right? And just saving lives and having a more comfortable experience. So I don't give a rat's ass about tourism in Europe from autonomous cars. They need it because it's obviously great for the economy, and it's great for safety, and it's great for comfort.
Oh, I heard a little snap in there. You said great for the economy. Yes. What is a big part of the European economy is tourism. See, so we're a little bit aligned there.
No one's gonna be a tourist to drive an autonomous vehicle. You can just you're gonna have an autonomous vehicle in your backyard, so you don't need to go to Europe to test their autonomous vehicles. No chance. Sorry.
No, because no. I was going to give you a clap there. Now, no clap for you. Yeah, yes, people will go there. We have data from San Francisco, the impact that Waymo's have from a tourism perspective. Waymo put out numbers
for now, right? But by the time they get autonomous vehicles in Europe, like that's going to be old hat. Like, the real, multi-trillion global opportunity in autonomy is not tourism. It's transportation.
Nope, fundamentally disagree, because you're going to build bespoke experiences that you can only build there. And you know what I mean by that. We don't have to get into that today, but it's going to be bespoke experiences.
Okay.
Now that we had our little back and forth and you didn't get a clap, what do we need to look for in the autonomy markets next week?
Sleep. I've been traveling for the last month around the globe. Next week, we have to look forward to sleep. And maybe, just maybe, our friends at Tesla will actually start taking passengers without, someone sitting in that passenger seat. Do you think that's a possibility? Because it's been 9 days, as of now, 10 days for our listeners tomorrow, and there's been no update about taking the safety attendant out.
Well, the way that this market's evolving, there will be no sleep till Austin. The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is a growing autonomy market. Walt, until next week.